I guess, good late afternoon, everyone. This is the February 17th, 2016 monthly meeting of Ignite Coeur d'Alene, and welcome. My name is Dave Patzer. I'm pitch hitting today for our chairman, Denny Davis, who happens to be out of town, so please, I ask you all to bear with me. This is kind of unplowed ground for me, this group. So first thing we need to do is pledge allegiance to the flag. Rod, would you lead us in that endeavor, please?
Yes. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Rod. Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comment. We have two specific spots each meeting that we open up for public comment. Is there anybody that wish to address the board at this time on items that are not on our agenda? Okay, not appearing so. The next thing is the approval of the agency's minutes of the meeting of January 20th, 2016. You all had a chance to review. Okay, there's a motion and second to approve the meetings of January 20th, 2016. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, they pass. Thank you. Next thing up is a presentation by our Downtown Association, Terry Cooper, and I believe it's Emily Boyd. Please join us at the podium with the presentation. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the time for the Downtown Association to make a presentation of the events that take place in downtown Coeur d'Alene. And we have placed in front of you, and it'll also be on the screen, events that we are projecting with the attendance and approximate dollars spent for 2016. And we just, believe it or not, had our first event last Friday evening, which was the chocolate affair on February 12th. And it attracted 880 people to the downtown area between 5 to 8 p.m. So it was a great impact. And through that chocolate event, people actually go into 32 to 33 different stores and restaurants that are sampling chocolates for people. And we found out, get out of the way of people because they really love chocolate. So we had a wonderful turnout, and we'll take a look at, you have the article? There we go. So the press did an article that came out on Sunday, and it might have been Saturday, but it captured a young couple in the Plaza Shops enjoying the chocolate fountain. But the part that we really wanted to bring out is this couple, they were students at Gonzaga University. And the part that they looked at, it's really nice to partake in an event because Coeur d'Alene is a really cool area. And we have so many people that when they come to the check-in point for an event like this, what positive comments that we receive from all the fun things and how Coeur d'Alene is so friendly to people who come for our events downtown. So our next area, and there's a letter that we won't go into the letter, but we'll look at the events that are projected in 2016. And I probably will have to look at the one on my, that's a little far away from me. But in 2016, we showed a variety of events that take place each month. In the approximate attendance based on previous events that we have, the visitor spending is a real challenge. And so because there are so many things that you can look at, whether it's parking, fees, what they spend in restaurants, what is spent on gasoline or in convenience stores, fast food restaurants, and then lodging. So we really tried to keep it down to a small number dollar amount. And what we have found in going through this research on the events is that we want to go further with having volunteers survey different events to talk to the public and see what they're doing, where they came from, are they staying for more than one day, overnight lodging, and so forth, so we can gather some more quality information that we should have and want to have in our library of information that we can look at and project. So you look at all the events that we have, and what it amounts to in a 12-month period of time was we projected that we draw into the Lake District area 135,600 visitors. Now, they can be local, out of town. Our events run from what we talked about, like the chocolate affair, where they go into the stores, to where we close streets. We have set up canopies, tents like street fair and art on the green, car to lane with cars, classic cars. So we look at a variety of things. And in there, we also have the farmers market, which takes place 22 Wednesdays, I believe, throughout the summer from May through September. So what we do is we've shared that with you. We wanted to look at what we think is a strong economic tool, a driver, for not just downtown, but the entire community, especially when we have events that run either a full day or multiple days. And so that is our information that we wanted to put forward to you so you could see what has been done as a strong partner in this process of having great events that bring quality people downtown. So we'd entertain if you have any questions. I'd like to, you introduced Emily Boyd as our new events coordinator that started in December with us. And Emily had her first, I shouldn't say taste of chocolate, but on Friday night, and it was great to see the response from Emily. It's fun to watch a new person who hasn't been hit with 800 people coming through the door to get wristbands and to go forward and sample chocolates. Thank you.
Any questions for Terry? I've got one, Terry. I noticed you left the 4th of July off of here. You probably did that for a reason. Is it difficult to estimate the economic impact of that event and the number of people? I know you got 14,000 for the lighting ceremony.
Dave, the reason there are a few events we didn't put on, and we were looking at events that we as the Downtown Association are directly involved with.
Okay.
And the 4th of July, which is a tremendous event, draws probably 30,000 people throughout the day with the parade and the fireworks and everything. It's put on by the Coeur d'Alene Chamber. So it's a strong, great, fantastic event, but we only addressed our portion of what we're directly involved with.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much. Next presentation on our agenda is the Mullen Road Project Element Four Corners Master Plan Update, the status update led by Welch Comer Design Team's head, Phil Boyd. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you. Good to be back. We wanted to give the board a brief update of where the project's at. Probably the first thing to point out is the project will advertise for bid on Monday, February 22nd, and that'll start the ball rolling from there. And we'll move through the bid process, and hopefully we'll get solid bids into the award and into construction. So we wanted to go through a little bit of the history, primarily as a refresher, and then talk a little bit about actually where we're at today. I always like to start with that picture. You guys have seen it before. But it just gives an indication of our area that we're starting to work with. In the context with the Four Corners Master Plan, this is also an important picture to show because our project area, as you know, is focused on Mullen Road. But it's really the cornerstone, as the board has pointed out themselves, for future development in this area here, in the uses in that area. The community vision, and this is straight out of the master plan document, and it's really gleaned from what we heard from the community, is what they're after is connecting the city park and Memorial Field, modifying Mullen Road to make it pedestrian friendly and not necessarily a vehicle priority street, and planning for the additional recreational opportunities, because we anticipate a much stronger pedestrian flow across Mullen Road in front of Memorial Field as that use expands at Memorial Field, hopefully in the near future. This was actually the concept presented at the final public meeting. I like to also show this one because even at the final public meeting, once we completed that and it moved towards City Council, Council continued to revise the design, the concept, to address some of the things that they heard from the neighborhood, primarily that parking lot, this T intersection down here, the sweep of Mullen Road into City Park, and at that time, the potential for tree removal. And this is the Veterans Memorial, which has shifted a little bit. But I guess the point I put this in, the reason I put this in is once we moved in from a concept to design objectives, those things were incorporated. And I'll show you in another image, but our design objectives as we moved into the Mullen Road project specifically was slowing the traffic, as we've talked about, connecting to City Park, creating additional public people space. And that's primarily in front of Memorial Field, and you'll see an image of that here shortly. Improving the bicycle and pedestrian circulation, and improved and additional organized parking, because there is parking there now, but it will be better organized. This was the concept presented at the city workshop for Mullen Road. And as you can see, the parking lot is still here. The T intersection is still here. And it was after this event that we moved into this design. You can see that the parking lot down in this area has gone away. There is a placeholder here for the Workers' Memorial, and the road is softened substantially. And we conceived of a new design in this area which allows lost folks, when the street is closed, because there'll be bollards in this area that they come into, they see that the bollards are closed, and now they have the opportunity to turn around and head back out. So this was actually what was presented at the Fort Ground Homeowners Association meeting. This is what Parks and Rec Commission meeting saw. You can see it's a little more highly detailed, more Del Hatch handiwork. You can see the parking area here, and an alternate expanded parking area here, which is now part of the project, because I think the Ignite board wanted to make sure we were expanding and providing sufficient parking. So now we'll get into the less interesting. These are actually sheets straight out of our drawing set. They're stamped up here preliminary, but they won't be here in a day or two. You can see the project area by this heavy dash line. It extends all the way down to Garden Avenue here on Mullen Road, Park Drive. There's a traffic circle in that area. This is the Ignite boundary. And Tony's been participating in our design review meetings and never misses the opportunity to point out to me to make sure we keep this area accounting separate, which we're actually showing that boundary on our drawings to keep it in front of us and make sure we're accounting for things separately. Again, this is an excerpt right out of the drawing set, and I won't go into detail on these other than just show you a few high points. This is the traffic circle. Part of what's a challenge when you get into these projects, originally the project was going to stop in this area. As you look at which walls you're going to tear down in remodeling your house, you start to think, well, this isn't a rational location to stop, so you start progressing a little bit, and at the end of the day, we actually had to get into this area. If you drive through this intersection, you'll notice that there's quite a few grade issues in here with the adjoining sidewalk. Once you start to touch things, you trigger the accessibility requirements, and so the project extended a little bit into this area. This is moving further into the plaza area here, and you can see the turnarounds that I was talking about here. The bollards will be in this location, and when they're up, If someone happens to get lost, they can come in here and just make a quick turnaround. These areas, which we call one of our designers calls the eyeliner, or the actual aprons on this area are if a large vehicle comes in and they actually have to off-track. These are mountable curbs, so they're rounded and they can off-track and move out. If the board happens to have questions, feel free to stop me as I'm moving through here. Moving up to the road here, you can see Northwest Boulevard here. This is an entrance to the north parking lot. This is the entrance to the HREI parking lot. The big feature here is the less than efficient exit that is right here presently gets moved back and realigned here. So I'll skip forward to this one. Out of the city parking lot, north has been reoriented here, so it's off to your left now. Where you currently exit here, you now will come down, exit out this way, gives a little better opportunity to queue vehicles, and now you're looking straight across at vehicles that are outcoming here. It's a much more efficient way to move vehicles out of the parking lot and into the parking lot as well. Let's see here. This is just an intersection of Park Drive where it comes into Mullen Road. We had to get into some of the approaches here to the neighbors here to make sure that we could properly restore their approaches, and we have some stormwater improvements that the city wanted to accomplish down in this area. This is the parking lot, and I'm going to skip ahead. That's actually a grading plan, but I'll show you. This is the striping that you can see that the extent of the parking area. We've worked to try to make the parking lot a little more desirable than just a big, gigantic parking lot. So there's quite a bit of landscaping in here. There'll be some additional landscaping along Northwest Boulevard. It's one of the first things you'll see coming into the Coeur d'Alene, and we wanted to make it a little nicer than just a big black surface area. Chris, do you know the space count? It's 112 or something like that, I think is, yeah, it's gone back and forth in that. So I'll let Del get into the colorful pictures here. This is where he can start talking about the Memorial Plaza area.
Bill, is that parking lot partly on BLM land?
No, ma'am. It is all completely on city property. The BLM property doesn't start until Garden Avenue. So all of the project is located on the city facilities.
So there won't be any parking on BLM land? Not
currently, and probably not even in the future, unless in the original Four Corners plan, there's a parking lot on BLM property located at the intersection of River and Northwest Boulevard, just to the southeast of that. And that's where the original plan for the parking was, kind of across the street from the Bridge Academy. And that was the original concept, and this was also part of the original concept. There's this idea of doing a city-county shared parking lot that's kind of moving through the city and the county, which would consolidate parking all on city property. And then the recreational improvements would be on the BLM property. Okay, any more questions for me?
Bill, I have a question. Is the project, I don't want to call it creep, but has it moved over to the intersection of West Garden and Mullen there, and you put in a traffic roundabout, yeah, right there. Are the people that are on that corner there, have they been involved with, are they aware that there's going to be, curb and sidewalk and all that sort of thing, and a roundabout coming to their neighborhood?
They're aware of it to the extent of they have not seen, I'm trying to remember if it wasn't even in this Parks and Rec meeting. I think it was the last opportunity that the public had chance to see it. What they have seen, because I remember getting a question from one of the Fort Grounds homeowners, is that the project had, as you said, kind of crept down to this area here. They've seen it to that part, but they probably have not seen that traffic circle. And I think some of our intent, and I think Tony's request to have us here to make this presentation, is to have make sure the final project is presented to the public. We're doing another meeting at the Parks and Rec Commission on the 22nd.
Okay, well, I guess my concern would be that there is some outreach that goes either to the homeowners group or those people individually, and let them know that the project has entered their front yard area, and give them a heads up rather than make them be reactionary when the equipment shows up. So
Okay.
just a suggestion. Any other questions or comments for Phil?
I'll turn it over to
I'd like to
Del.
know, are there going to be hard copies of this available to the board members?
Tony's got a hard copy.
Tony's got hard copies of all of it? Thank you.
He does. Welcome, Dale.
So you're on a fairly
Thank
tight
you.
timeline here to inform property owners.
Could be there. I think we have a pretty strong connection with the Foreground Homeowners Association. If we want to reach out to them, I think there's 2 or 3 folks that we dealt with extensively through the Four Corners Master Planning Project, and I think we could reach out to them. You know, would work with Bill and Gordon, and we can communicate with them via email and go have a sit down with them. We could do that quickly.
Okay. Mr. Hatch.
Thank you. I'll walk you through a few of the details of the plaza crossing that Phil described and showed you in the construction drawings. This is a slightly elevated view from the western side of the city park looking back into this plaza. You can see that I have illustrated the locations of existing trees in these locations, and as you go up, I haven't obviously shown the crown or the foliage because it would hide everything that is in the background. So these that look like stumps at this point are actually the trees that exist that we modified this design to retain throughout. So these are the new connective walks that Phil pointed out that go down to, over on this walk would extend to the restroom. This would go down to the central portion of the park and the band shell and the access. Another walk over to Bill Greenwood's Parks building, storage building here. Right through this area would be a crossing for access that exists today, so it remains in the same spot. The traffic circle that's shown here is the easternmost one that Phil pointed out. At this time, we're showing colored concrete in the street, so there's an accent on the circle itself of colored concrete. The aprons that Phil talked about here and here, also colored concrete. And then there's a ramp or a speed table that moves all the way through along Mullen through here, and then ramps back down on the other side on the western traffic circle. The bollards, you can see the bollards here that Phil mentioned can be raised or set in case we want to close this street, so there would also be bollards actually right in this area on the other side. Bollards here as well at the pedestrian traffic crossing points. So here, through here where it's the lighter brown, and through here. That's simply because these are wide enough. That's simply to not allow a stray vehicle to get onto the sidewalk in the park, et cetera, or into the plaza. So there's corresponding bollards on the plaza side that you can see in these areas. So again, colored concrete in use in the street. Clay pavers, illustrated in the red, are the accent for the plaza itself. We have one major sweeping sidewalk that kind of cuts through the western portion of this development, extends all the way out to Northwest Boulevard along this walk, has access into the new parking lot here, and then extends all the way down Mullen to the extent of the project on Park Drive. The plaza itself is fairly open through this area. We have some larger proposed linden trees in these locations, and then a couple more over in this area. From about this point towards the carousel is sort of the extended portion of this plaza up to an abutting sidewalk that would front the carousel. So this is the carousel location. It's kind of tucked into that southeastern corner of this plaza area. It's not a small structure. It's not necessarily real tall in comparison, say, to the grandstand, but it is 62 feet in diameter. So it's a substantial building with carousel obviously on the inside of this octagonal building. Has a little bit of the era of the architectural era of the carousel pony mounted on the very top. There's some signage on one of the walls. The access points are actually glass roll-up doors. So there's a lot of free movement in and out at various walls on the carousel. And again, the activity plaza for activities associated with carousel can spill out into this area and then the plaza area through here as well. Here's another connection over to the parking lot in this area, and then this whole route through the center through here would act as access for maintenance for parks. Parking lot in the background, there's some landscaping through the center. The parking lot's been designed to be simplified for ease of maintenance and plowing of snow, et cetera. Any questions before I move on a little bit?
I have one, Dell. If you could put that slide up there, please. So when we roll around to the end of June, first part of July, when you're projecting to have this project done, what will this picture really look like when you guys are done? Carousel isn't going to be there, I would guess. So what will be there in lieu of the carousel, and how much of that area around the carousel will be grass? You know, what's going to be the finished product when this?
Good question. I can almost give you a delineating line. If you follow from the parking lot, this access walk that I talked about, this line right here, this edge, that line, essentially a 9-foot offset through here to there of what will be the pad, future pad for the carousel. Everything outside of that pad will be developed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes,
You know,
Tony?
you might just want to share that if the carousel is not ready, it'll be planted in grass, and it'll
Yes.
be irrigated, and it'll be green.
Yeah, it won't be a gravel surface. We will actually put turf in there. It will be irrigated, obviously set up so that it can be demolished easily, and it's all zoned separately. So we anticipate a fairly easy transition at the point the carousel were able to have their funds to construct it. And obviously their access then for construction would be limited to the parking lot side.
All utilities and services will be stubbed in and waiting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
He
All
said,
utilities and services will be
Oh,
stubbed
yes.
in and waiting.
Yes, there's conduit for utilities, for the services, for water, sewer, I believe, is that correct? And power coming into that site as well. So one of the things I didn't point out in this plaza that I'll show you a few slides of are the furniture and the character of the furniture. You can see a light standard right here. That's sort of a double-headed light that kind of lights this pedestrian area. You can see them also, for instance, here across the street, another double here, 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 and then a number of them that are placed in the plaza themselves and along the walk out to about this point for collecting people. So the lighting that is associated with this specific area will look like that light. This is obviously a single. In the few locations where we have doubles, there'd be one over on this side as well. This furniture has been selected in discussions with Bill Greenwood. We're looking at two different styles of benches. One, a backless bench. These backless benches, and I'll back up real quickly and show you where those would be. These trees out in the plaza are not, they won't be installed in a typical tree well with a tree grate. These are 8 by 8 foot square openings. We're going to create a larger root zone for these trees so they don't become root bound in a well. On the surface we'll have shrubbery. And then on either side in this direction there'd be a bench here, there'd be a bench on the other side, similar at this tree, another tree here, and then we have benches around that tree. Those would be the benches that I just showed you the backless benches, and then we have some trash receptacles that will be part of this, and we have some bike racks as well. Very limited number of bike racks, but bike racks within the plaza. And then we will have, excuse me, there's about 6 or 7 benches that will be then placed throughout the plaza in coordination with Bill Greenwood and his staff that will have benches with arms. So it'd be more accurately, it'd be the one over here on the left. So Phil has described this next slide I'll show you is the fact that I can't help myself when we start looking at some of the options that might present great opportunities. And so this is an existing view looking across the parking lot to the back side of the Memorial Field grandstand. And my thoughts when I presented it to a couple of our committee meetings was, is there any opportunity, and we're not touching the grandstand, we're not proposing any directly improvements to it, but with the obvious enhancements and upgrades to the plaza through this area, the future installation of the carousel, the improvements along the street, there's going to be some dramatic aesthetic changes to this space. And my question was, is there an opportunity to look at doing something along the backside of the grandstand that would tend to be a little more fitting in terms of its opportunity for use, et cetera? So the concept on this would be a covered awning standing off just barely from the back wall, providing it would be mostly steel construction as an idea with brick columns. There may be a change in the font of the Memorial Field, just again more in keeping with the era of the grandstand when it was constructed. Opportunities maybe to add some banners, maybe look at an awning over the top of the concession stand, and an opportunity to create some shade in that area, places for people to sit. If there's an opportunity for enhanced vending, then tables, chairs, et cetera, could be put here. Obviously, lighting could be added up underneath the roof structure. So that's an idea that we looked at. It was, discussed as an opportunity for an ad alternate. So we have also worked with some contractors and got some pricing based on nothing more than this sketch of about those round numbers, somewhere between $150,000 and $175,000. There's another opportunity. I'll back up real quick here just to give you a orientation. So I talked about the traffic circles. We will have some sort of, let's call it an obstacle or a visual cue to the drivers, and an obstacle so that people don't drive straight over the top of these. There'll be some sort of an obstacle or barrier there with some landscaping. Preferably, we'd like to see them lit. So right now in our base bid, it represents more something close to what I've shown in that sketch. And there may also be a couple of signs on either side that would direct traffic as they would approach it. One of the ideas that we've also floated to the committee at various points is there an opportunity to create these traffic circles, to install these entry icons that could also be lit, could possibly have banners. And again, this is simply a quick concept drawing to show what we felt would be the appropriate scale of roughly 20 to 22 feet high. That traffic circle itself, the actual protected portion, is 12 feet in diameter. So this shows some proportions that we think might work. We also think it's a great location as people would travel on Mullen to use the Ignite insignia that is going to be installed with some of the projects you folks have assisted with. So that's where we think the Ignite logo could be set in something like this if it were to become possibly an ad alternate. They are not within the budget. This one nor the awning are within the budget at this time.
Okay, questions for Dell? Let's talk about restrooms a little bit. I know that the existing brick structure in the park was going to remain. Does this project include the scope of remodeling that, or is that outside the scope of this work?
I think there's some improvements to the sewer connection. Is that right?
The only improvements that are part of the project are the sewer connection because it's deteriorated. But the actual improvements to the restroom are not included in the scope of work.
Okay. When the carousel occurs, there will probably have to be a similar event besides their particular building project to remodel the restrooms that are beneath Memorial Field to put more services readily available for that increased amount of people that are going to be drawn to that area? Is that a yes, or is that another
Well, I think
alternative that's out there?
I think it's on, and Bill might be better to answer that question. Based on the discussion that's been part of our design committee, is that it's on the radar screen. It's not part of, I don't think it's tied to the carousel, the improvements in Memorial Field. This project, because we're going to be making improvements in front of Memorial Field, we're making sure to extend a new sewer service into this building, a fire service into this building, which is a pretty, I don't want to say, it's an expense to bring a fairly large fire service into that building, as well as a new water service. And so all these improvements that you see in Dell's rendering here won't be disturbed if the city elects to touch the building, because as you folks know, as soon as you touch the building, a lot of it probably needs to come up to code. And so Bill wanted to make sure he was planning far enough ahead, and we were putting those services into the building so we didn't have to disturb anything outside the Memorial footprint. So we're making provisions for it, but I'm not sure when it's included in the plan of action.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, gentlemen, thank you. The next item on our agenda is a presentation from Mr. Dennis Cunningham from Active West Builders on a project on Davidson Avenue. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you. Well, that's awesome up there on the wall. That's a neat project. I hadn't been staying up on all the details of that one. It's exciting to see down in the downtown. As you guys know, we spend about 90% of our time and our money south of 90 now, given that one of our developments, Meadow Ranch, is pretty much completed. So we've invested our time and efforts into the downtown core, building small product type. And so this project is a couple homes that I had bought a year and a half ago on Davidson, just kind of tracking with what's going on at Kootenai Medical and watching the absorption in Riverstone and looking at the lack of new housing. So we had bought two homes. They were about 70 or 80 years old. We had tenants in them, and then we had to get the tenants out because of the mold that was building up in one of them that was pretty bad, and it was starting to build up in the second one. So I approached the city engineering and planning and said, hey, why don't we take a stab at the pocket housing design? So we presented a pre-application to the city, moved through the process, and came up with 7 units that we could build and take down 2 in one of your districts. And that district, I don't think, has a lot of life left to it. I think it might be less than 5 years, 6 years. So I do have some handouts. We're on a slippery budget in the corners. What had happened is we had submitted an application to Ignite, and I don't know the exact date, but it was in the fall. And at that time, when we submitted, the homes were still up, vacant. We started to watch the weather. The improvement plans were approved, and we got into a situation where the asphalt plants were going to shut down, yet we needed to get into the road for sewer. So in that process, I had tried to be careful to respect the timelines that you guys like to adhere or follow, as well as us not being stalled with a project all the way through the winter. So we went ahead and took down the buildings, and in that process, Tony had scheduled for us to go talk to the Finance Committee, and we met with them. So since then, both buildings had come down, and we had done some work to get into Davidson so we could tap into the sewer. So the reason that I'm coming back here is to see if you guys are able to look at some of the costs that we've incurred with the roads, the sewer, the water, the curbs, the storm systems, and some of the demo. Obviously, these are small. We're trying to do, these aren't micro houses, but they're 650 to 1,300 square feet, brand new, energy efficient. They'll be certified LEED buildings. In that downtown core, they're main floor living, 1 and 2 car garages. So we're trying to tap into that market of a single person, entry-level buyer, or a buyer that just doesn't want a lot of maintenance being in that core. So where we got sort of a hiccup was that we had to get into the road before the asphalt plant shut down. We've bonded around that work because it just so happened the day that work was taking place, Gordon said, hey, temperatures are getting too low, but things were already in motion, so we've bonded around that. We also bonded around both of the driveways to the neighborhoods because we weren't going to get the asphalt in time, but we also thought it would make it nicer as we go in and do the development all at once, which is another big issue. We went to the bank and said, hey, Ignite has 6 years left on their life over here. I can't do this onesie-twosie. I've got to get this project in. It's tight. The numbers are tight on it. What can you guys do? Because these are all individual lots. And it looks like they're putting something together that we can go in and put this project in. We get better pricing on some of the materials and concrete work, framing, etc. The 4-lot project was about $99,000 of our work, the offsite, and the home demo, which had All West had to do a decent amount of environmental work. I think we had submitted something requesting about $32,000 on some of the work that we were doing in there. The 3-unit project was $96,000, and we were requesting $24,000 on that one. This is sort of new to us to go into an infill area and get in and deal with it. I mean, we had adjacent property owner that had their fence 10 feet on our property. We got out there, got into the road, which was already a difficult time because of the temperature, and we find out that there's a gas line sitting a foot above the sewer system in which we needed to drop a manhole. Fortunately, we didn't hit the gas line, but guess what? We got to call a Vista to move it. They charged us $7,000, and guess when we had to call them? When we had our ice storm. I got openings in the road. So things are, I'm not here complaining, but it's not, everything doesn't line up just perfect when you're talking about, we live in North Idaho and I got temperatures to deal with, road closures, open exposed utilities. So anyway, not to belabor it, this is what we were hoping to come back to, try to see if we couldn't work out something to get an agreement together. We haven't submitted building permits. Last night, I think City Council on the consent calendar approved the bonds. The plats are supposed to be sent over to the county, I think, tomorrow. And we would like to then, proceed into that next phase of building plans. I don't know if I've left anything out or if there's any questions.
Just a quick clarification. You've done most of the work on one side of Davidson, the other side you haven't really started yet, or do you have both houses taken down?
Okay, we took both houses on the same side of the road. The conversation we had with the finance committee was, it just so happened the guy across the street put up his home for sale, and we have had some conversations about that to potentially go in and do either 5 to 7 of the same type of process. But I've mentioned in our meeting at the finance, I've sort of backed off. Honestly, these are thin numbers here. We have to overpay for the lot, right? Because it's infill. You can't hardly buy anything that's a tear down under 150. And then we had to do, a lot of demo work in there. So to answer your question, that one is still out there. It's not sold because of the price.
It's not part of this ask, though.
It's not part of this
Okay.
one. That's correct. Yeah.
All right, thanks for clarification. Questions for Dennis?
A question of clarification for Tony. On the application that Dennis indicated was submitted last fall, was that a complete application before the work or after the work, or do you recall?
Well, it was received, I received the application, and I didn't really kind of know where this area was, so I drove up to Davidson to kind of look and see where this was, and I saw the houses being demolished. So then I called Dennis and kind of informed him of kind of the timing on this is very unusual for the board to consider this, because usually the board wants to be on the front end of these decisions prior to work being started to show that there is a need for agency participation. So that's when the conversation started.
Okay, thanks.
So that the board understands the ask, I believe you're asking Dennis for roughly $33,000 on the 716 Amon Place and $24,000 on the 1718 Solomon Court.
That's correct.
So the total ask is the sum of those two, roughly just shy of $58,000.
Right.
Okay.
And I would suspect with the environmental and the demo of the homes, 35% of that is probably demolition of 80-year-old buildings and some of the environmental work. And then just a few complications in the road just because it was so old, some of the utilities.
Okay. Any other questions for Dennis? Concerns? What's your pleasure?
Well, for a discussion point, the challenge that we have, and we've had it in the past, is if the work's already started before we get the application, the question becomes, would the project be done with or without our help? And I think that's the part that we need to discuss.
Okay, well, let's ask Dennis that question. If the roughly the $58,000 worth of funding that you requested does not happen, will your project not happen?
No, the project will move forward. That's why because I knew of some of the items that we're talking about, that's why we had then gone to the bank and said, this is thin, we've got to work a way out so I can get in here and do 4 and 3 units at the same time to start to do some value engineering with the infrastructure that's left and the units. And like I said, there was no reason to get pushed into this at all, except that I'm in the road, in the right of way with asphalt cutting it up, and the city engineers are not, wanting me to be in there. So it really just came down to where we live and the temperature and what was going on. It wasn't an intentional, let's go around and not do the process, Probably, if things would have moved along, the houses would have been taken down and I would have been in front of you guys, right? But this got stalled a little bit. Anyway.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
But to answer the question on the other side, would I do it? I think I've also answered. I don't think I can go across the street and do another 7, given some of the numbers. So I'm being honest, it's pretty thin, and I think we have a reason to be in there. I mean, I can put 14 to 15 units on Davidson that are neat little type of homes, but it's thin. The permit fees are the permit fees. The kitchen is the kitchen, right? It doesn't matter how big or small it gets. So to answer your question, we have not moved into escrow on that property. I don't know if it's what the numbers would look like. I've told the bank that we're being considered potentially for some money, but we're trying to figure out other ways to do it, to value engineer construction all at the same time. Anyway.
Okay, all right. Okay, what would you all like to do? Deanna?
It has never been our process over the years that I can recall that we ever got involved in a project before it happened, or after the fact, so to speak. Always it was, there's a certain criteria that we have to meet. Obviously, some of these older homes do meet that criteria, but there's criteria that we have to meet, and I made it a point that I'm not comfortable going forward with a project that has already begun at this point in the game. I feel if there's valid reasoning under our guidelines and rules as to why there should be some kind of a OPA or agreement to help fund some of these projects, I'm not uncomfortable with that at all. Dennis builds a great project, I've never seen any of his do anything but just be very, very successful and do very well and are beautifully built and are an asset to the community. So I could maybe see talking about a future opportunity, but at this point in the game, it seems to me that we just shouldn't break precedent and move forward on a project that's already begun and already funded.
I would support Deanna's opinion on that. It's just tough to come after a project has already been started and fun to ask. So I would support Deanna's position on that.
Okay, anybody else? Is that kind of the group's consensus or differing opinion of that? Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And what you said, Dennis does a good project, nice buildings. We might be able to help on the next one up front when we have all the information on the application. It's just very difficult once it's already started. So
I know part of the original process that we put out there was a financial analysis of the viability of the project. Without the request from us. I know that part was part of our packet, and I assume that it still is, Tony. It's part of when a potential comes to us. We need to see some numbers to make sure that the need is definitely there. And Deanna, did you have something else?
I think it's important that we say, if the project hasn't begun already, that it's certainly worth us looking at it, and if the criteria is followed, upgrading housing in our community is well worth our energy and assistance if we can make it work. But it has to be, I believe, with the criteria that we've kind of established over the years. I would suggest that the one that hasn't started, maybe you want to take another look at that and see if that's an opportunity there. But I would not be comfortable at all. I don't know if you want a consensus or a motion.
Oh, Tony, do we need actually a motion? It hasn't been a formal.
I don't think we need a motion, do we?
Well, it's not an action item on the agenda either.
And the only other concern, I guess, that I would have is, I know we've done a project in the past with Dennis and his organization, so he's aware of us and he knows of us, not late to the party as far as our opportunities to what he's doing. So, okay. All right. Well, if that's the consensus, Dennis, I think you probably heard us. We certainly be interested from something from the get-go instead of maybe on your way to first base. So
Yeah, that's what it was, the fifth inning, you said. Okay. I appreciate you guys listening. It's not something typically we like to do outside of the process. It just was timing and weather, and I had to make a decision. And just so you know, I didn't tell the bank that this was on TV, so.
he might pick up on that. Okay, thanks, Dennis.
Guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay. Next item is our committee reports, Finance Committee. Mr. Caldwell.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if the group could go to the balance sheet for the Lake District first. And the Lake District during last month did have an increase in cash of $2,230,653, and that's a result of the large semi-annual increment check that we received from the county. We typically get one check in January, we get another one in July, so that was a large item that came in. If you look at the liability section of the balance sheet, we did have our mortgages and notes decrease by $7,625, which represents our typical monthly payments that we make each month on debt obligations, and our debt obligations are getting fairly small as far as the total dollar amount. If you would go to the profit and loss, again, for the Lake District, that's where you'll see the increment money coming in. It was $2,258,799. We also had rent income of just a little bit more than $11,500. We had a little bit of interest income and a security deposit. So total revenue for the month, which is very active for us, is $2,273,285. If you look down on the fees and expenses, you will see that we did have a payment to M&M for the audit during the month, and we also had payment to Welch Comer for their development of the Four Corners Master Plan. Everything else was typical for the month. No real significant items beyond that. Any questions on the Lake District before we move to the River District? Seeing none, let's go ahead and go to the River District. And again, let's start with the balance sheet because, again, fairly active during the month. We had an increase in cash in the River District of $1,104,774, and that, again, was the result of the increment check that we received from the county. If you go to the liabilities and everything else for the month, there was not much activity, so I prefer that we go directly to the the profit and loss statement. And that's where you'll see the increment check that we did receive of $1,124,715. We had some interest income of $353 for a total income of $1,125,068. And then you go down to look under professional fees. Again, you'll see some expenses there for the audit and also for Welch Comer. And you'll see also reserving some money for the art fund. But really the big item in both districts this month was the increment. And so that the committee knows, we also look at that in the Finance Committee just to see how that's tracking as far as the money we received versus what we anticipated. And it's really close. It is not off by much. So it would appear as though our budget as far as revenue should be darn close this year as far as total revenue. Any questions on the balance sheet or the profit and loss for the River District? Seeing none, I would like to go to the payables. And this is where you'll see, now that we have the increment money in, we have a lot of payments to make down below. But we'll start at the top. We do have a bill from Elam and Burke, $940.50. Hawley Troxel for their services, $2,835. Molitor and Associates for their government relations consulting, $1,985.14. And then down in the next section, you'll see the semi-annual interest, or not interest, but semi-annual payments that we make on our various projects that we have. That could be OPAs, IRAs, just depends on how they were set up. But you can see we've detailed for you the ones that have all principal, the ones that are all interest, and you can see the larger ones for sure, $22,000 on the ice plant, roughly $14,800 on the Sherman Avenue loft, Riverstone West Phase 1, and again this is all interest, $143,325.83, Riverstone West 2, $23,429.63, Mill River Senior Apartment, $6,124.90, Riverstone West Apartment, all interest, $5,924.69, and Riverstone West Apartments, $5,504.80. And then you'll see a large one for the Washington Trust Lake District Bond. That's $975,032.73. In the past, that has typically been a payment of $1,080,000. That's changed because we didn't draw the money on the line of credit we had with them, so they made an adjustment to our payment this last time. So you'll see that we reduced the principal on that obligation by $800,000. We paid some interest of $172,900.27. And then we have at the very bottom the Coeur d'Alene Downtown Association, and this is a result of our events and services agreement to assist the Downtown Association, which was nice to have Terry here to talk to us about what they're doing, because we do support their efforts. If you add up all the payables this month, $1,215,761.45. Excuse me, I did that wrong. It's the total down at the bottom, $1,221,522.09. And just so you know, on all these various payments that we make for these projects we're involved with, Tony prepares a check, but he also gives them a recap sheet as to how we figured out the interest and principal, so they can double check our math and agree with it or not. And Tony's done a good job of being very precise on that. So we are right as far as what we send, but it gives them an opportunity to do the math and check it. So as far as the financials go, and then obviously the payables, any questions on the payables?
Mr. Chair, just a question I had, the Washington Trust, the Lake District bond, so semi-annual, so payment in February, next payment then in August. Is that the way it works? So every 6 months? Okay.
Every 6 months.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rod? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve both the Lake and the River District financials as presented and the payables.
Move to approve
Second.
the payables and the finance report.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Rod. Anything else from finance, Rod?
No, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, next one's housing. Commissioner Goodland, or anything?
It's been pretty quiet. No report, sir.
Any parking? Brad, anything?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Make it a clean sweep here. Communications has nothing really to report. It's been kind of quiet. And the last one is jobs. In Mr. Arman's absence, Tony, do you have anything on jobs?
I'll close out the no report to share comments for the committee.
All right. Wow. I don't know if we've gotten through that slate of information that quickly before. But. All right. The next thing is the executive director's report. Tony.
Two items, Mr. Chairman. The first one is the Saltese Way reconstruction project, the City IgniteCDA project design financing agreement. So as you recall, we have chatted with the city about help fund their design of the Saltese Way reconstruction project. We have $250,000 budgeted in this fiscal year for that initiative, and Watchcomber Engineers has been chosen as the consultant, and we're getting ready to, consummate that agreement. And so I sent you the funding agreement that's very similar that we had with the Mullen Road project, and I'll just kind of share with you a few highlights of the agreement that are incorporated in the agreement that you saw in its entirety. So basically it says IgniteCDA and the city have agreed to share the costs incurred for the architectural, engineering, and related costs for the design of the Saltese Way reconstruction project. The design of the project shall be subject to written approval by IgniteCDA prior to the release of construction contract or commencement of construction on the project. IgniteCDA has agreed to pay up to $250,000 to fund design costs related to project elements solely within the boundary of the River District. An IgniteCDA board member and or the IgniteCDA executive director shall be a member of the project implementation team, and IgniteCDA shall approve any and all consultant draw requests made of the city. IgniteCDA shall have the ability in its sole discretion to hire any third-party consultant or expert to oversee the design of the project at our expense. And within 30 days of a project request or project draw request of the consultant being submitted to the city, we will approve it and the city will approve it, and then we will pay the consultant, the contractor, directly. Very similar to our Mullen Road project agreement. Ms. Quaid, do you have anything to add that I might have missed, or really the core parts of this agreement?
We require the city to provide adequate insurance and to indemnify us for the actions of their employees as well, since they're the ones that are actually managing the project.
And I believe City Council approved this agreement last night. Is that correct?
They also will indemnify us, because I believe, is the Post Falls Highway going to participate in a little bit of the part of the project that's approaching the Hutter Road?
The
So
western
since
portion.
they're a third party involved, they'll indemnify us against anything that should happen with that relationship, I would guess.
That's
Correct.
not included in this agreement, but I don't think it's contemplated to be part of this
Isn't
project.
it?
And this is just the design.
Okay.
So we're not going to actually have people out on the ground doing the construction pursuant to this agreement. We'll do a different agreement when we get to the construction phase.
It might be a question for Matt in the audience. Is that true? Is they are not involved in the design? Can we go up here?
Please. Yes, please. Identify yourself, if you would, Matt, for the audience at home.
Matt Gillis, Welch Comer, 350 East Kathleen. So the short answer to that is yes, the Post Falls Highway District is a participant in the project because there's a portion of the project that's outside the Ignite boundary. It's from Hutter, we'll say 1,000 feet to the east. And so I believe the city will have an agreement separately with the Post Falls Highway District to pay their proportionate share.
That's my understanding.
Okay, all right. Any questions, Matt? Thanks, sir.
You bet.
Thank you.
So we might want to contemplate that in our agreement regarding the construction.
Construction documents, okay. Duly noted. Any other questions or comments about this document?
Please specify which board member is going to be there.
Not in the agreement. It just says one board member or the executive director.
I think we just had somebody maybe volunteer for it. I don't know.
I was thinking Mick.
But, so duly noted. Okay, I believe you want board action on this.
Yeah, we need a
Correct?
motion. Mhm.
So I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, here a second.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, none appearing so. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Motion carries.
And the second item I have, Mr. Chairman, is just an update on the Collaborative Education Facility Initiative. I think this is the facility that's going to be built out on the higher education campus with partnership with U of I, North Idaho College, Lewis Clark State College, the Permanent Building Fund, IgniteCDA, and I might turn it over to Commissioner Hoskins that might have an update to share.
Just remember a couple of months ago when they were making that presentation, I asked to make sure if Kootenai Health was involved in that 'cause from the very beginning. They wanted to be, and the I believe Kootenai Health is meeting with NIC executives next week to finalize that,
Okay, very
whatever
good.
that is. But they're going to.
And then they'll get back to us, you, or the public somehow on there.
Yeah. Well, I'll present whatever the findings are here.
Okay.
Great.
Very
Good
good.
job.
Okay. Anything else in
That's
that
all.
initiative?
Nope.
Tony? Okay. All right. Next thing is board commissioner comments. Any comments? Anybody would like?
I just wanted to add that last night Tony came and gave a report, the annual report of of Ignite to City Council. Did a very good job of explaining it from the history, the very start of the agencies, all the way through to what we're doing today. And I just wanted to thank Tony, and I know the council really appreciate it. You learn something new every time, and there were some points in Tony's presentation that I learned for the first time. So I know that myself and the council are very appreciative of Tony making that presentation.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I know one of your recommendations, too, was that we take that part of the presentation, the council maybe post it to our website, make it available.
It really is an easy to follow, informal education on what we do. And I know it doesn't have all the bells and whistles maybe that Range would put in something like that, but it's very informative. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Good suggestion.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Thanks, Tony, for doing
Good
that.
job, Tony.
Any other board commissioner comments? Okay. Anyone from the public? Your second chance to address any items or issues? Not appearing so. I think we're at that point, we're entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Been moved.
I'll second that.
Seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.